Hey everybody, this is Ralph Vieira, and welcome to the Vieira Vault Show. Hey, that's my brand new half-ass intro. Yeah, I really got to work on that, but hey, it's episode 2, and I'm finding my niche. And check it out, man. This week I'm going to review Paul Stanley's book, Face the Music. It's kind of a review. Before I get into it, I own the audiobook, so what you'll be hearing throughout the show are clips from the audiobook. And, yeah, I'm going to point out a lot of things that I feel is bullshit or stuff that Paul Stanley refuses to acknowledge. But there's a lot of good things he says in the book. And number one, it is a really good book. It's very entertaining. And I enjoyed it more than the other books, though I've not read Ace Frehley's book yet, or Peter Criss. I'm like halfway done. And I've read Gene Simmons' book, and I don't really hate it as much as everybody. The first one he released, the one with his tongue out. And this one, it is very interesting, and there's a lot of stuff I'm obviously going to leave out, because this will be a 10-hour episode. Because it's like 10 CDs, and I took out little clips of the story, and I've done this like months ago. I did it little by little for preparation for one of my shows, and I figured, fuck it, let's do it the second show. And I'm going to have commentary throughout it, but you know, there's a lot of stuff I leave out of the book, and especially like the beginning. Paul Stanley had, you know, a deformed ear, and he went through a lot of ridicule as a kid, and I got to say, before I get into it, because it's really going to sound like a Paul Stanley hating spree on here, but I got to say, I think Paul Stanley is an extremely underrated songwriter. He's written so many great songs, and I love Kiss. I love Kiss. I love a lot of Kiss. There's a lot of Kiss I don't like, including songs from Gene, and my favorite member, Ace, had a couple songs I didn't like. I didn't like Two Sides of the Coin, and Torpedo Girl was but you know, and Peter, of course, didn't really write much, but he is my favorite voice at Kiss, my favorite vocalist. But I gotta say, Paul Stanley is like the heart and soul of Kiss. He does prove it on this show. He dedicated more to the band than every member of the band, so I do commend the guy. And it's gonna sound like I really hate him, and I know there's a lot of people online that don't really like my opinions on Kiss when it comes to the hypocrisy of it. Well, there's plenty of it here, so but you know what? There's a lot of people that do agree with me too. I think the people that agree with me outweigh the people that don't. So I'm not going to say stuff you know, like Paul goes into certain, like, you know, he'll talk about music and stuff, and I'm not even going to go to that because, as I said in my first episode, if you heard it, musical opinion's not something to argue about, because everybody's right with whatever you like. I'm not going to talk about songs I absolutely love that he bashes, and albums that I absolutely love that he bashes. I'm going to talk about, you know, just little clips, and there's a lot of clips I have here. There's like 30-something clips. So I might as well get started, and just to build up the first clip you're going to hear, Paul Stanley did not have a great childhood. His parents were kind of mean to him, and he just had a hard time with a lot of stuff. And in this clip, you kind of hear, you know, this chip on his shoulder when he first met Gene Simmons. And I think it was the first time, or one of the first times, he went to Gene's house, and he encountered his mom. And this is what he has to say about it.
In his mother's eyes, Gene could do no wrong. If I happened to call when he was in the bathroom, she would say, "The king is on the throne." Even when he was on the toilet, she believed he created masterpieces. I, on the other hand, couldn't get a compliment out of my parents if my life depended on it. They went out of their way not to compliment me. I think they thought they were toughening me up that way. Gene could do no wrong. I could do no right.
That pretty much sums up the book so far. He had, you know, a childhood not that great, and not very much support from his parents. So let's fast forward to the first time he met Peter Criss.
He looked quite a bit older than I was, and he had about 5 names. George, Peter, John, Criscola, blah, 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 but he went by Peter Criss. We walked to a pizza joint and sat down with our slices. We hadn't been talking for 5 minutes when Peter blurted out, "I have a 9-inch dick." I didn't know what to say. Pass the cheese? This guy was very different from us. Peter could barely read or spell, and he wasn't a thinker. When he played with us the first time at 23rd Street, it didn't sound particularly good. Peter didn't know much about British music. He knew the Beatles, and he liked Charlie Watts of the Stones. But that was probably because he liked to believe he played like Charlie Watts, basic, not showy. As for any other drummers, the ones he couldn't play like, he disliked them all. Peter also didn't understand the basics of song structure, verse, chorus, bridge. It all meant nothing to him. If I said, "Let's pick up at the second verse," he just sat there. He had to memorize a song from beginning to end, and if we stopped in the middle or he lost his place, he was fucked.
I know what you're thinking. Then why hire him? Doesn't seem like the drummer you would want, talking about how big his dick is and he's not a great player. But the truth of the matter is, Peter Criss is a great player, an awesome player. A lot of people judge Peter Criss today because, he's old and he doesn't drum like he used to. But man, listen to Dress to Kill, listen to Kiss Alive. The guy was a monster on drums. And this is why Paul Stanley woke up and hired Peter Criss, because he does indeed rule.
Perhaps as a result, his playing was wild. You could call it unorthodox, but that wouldn't be accurate. It was just plain erratic. His drum parts would change verse to verse. Still, for all he lacked in continuity, he played with fire and vitality. He was scrappy. We asked him back for another rehearsal. The next rehearsal went much better. Again, his playing showed personality and a real zest for life. Some of the songs developed a different feel than Gene and I originally might have had in mind. Peter just couldn't play like the drummers we had in our heads as we wrote, but what he delivered still worked as a blueprint for the band we wanted to be. Looking back now, there's no denying that a drummer like John Bonham wouldn't have fit what we were doing, although if we had our druthers, Gene and I would certainly have gone in that direction. Back then, Peter was the right guy for the band. His drumming was brash and full of piss and vinegar. Peter instinctively played ahead. At times we had to catch up to him. In the best-case scenario, a drummer is like the back of a chair. You can lean back on it and know it's there for you. It's a foundation. But Peter ran alongside us, which was a different animal altogether. Even so, things just clicked. Even as a trio, we sounded very promising.
All right, not all clips are that long. I'm just building this up. Believe me, it gets better. It's like a book, man, building it up. All right, if you're a Kiss fan, you already all know the story how Ace joined the band, one red sneaker, one orange sneaker. Bob Kulick was bald and he didn't get the job, and so on. Well, now that we're going to go into a story of when they were first playing gigs, or I think this was from the very first gig, and what Ace did after the gig was done.
After each show, we drove back to 23rd Street to stow the gear. Ace sat on his ass and boozed. We were still getting used to his personality. The shows confirmed that he was everything we were looking for musically. But they also confirmed the fact that he was one of the laziest people, the laziest person I had ever met. These first shows made some things clear to me. I had always wanted a big sound, a 2-guitar steamroller, like Humble Pie. And we had achieved elements of that, but at the same time we lacked a sense of heft, of magnitude. I almost felt as if the other guys had jeopardized the band. They acted small time.
All right, yeah, Ace is infamous of being lazy, and even though I'm the biggest Ace nut swinger and my favorite member of Kiss, I'm not going to disagree with Paul, because even Ace has admitted he's lazy, or was lazy. He seems to be on a roll these days. He doesn't seem to be that lazy anymore, but the warning signs were already there. So you're going to hear Paul complain a lot about Ace and Peter later on, but the truth of the matter is, he knew it from the get-go what he was getting into, but as he said, it was just magic. Those four playing together, I guess he was young and naive and was going to put up with the bullshit. Anyway, here is Paul talking about Ace's persona in the band, or his character in the band.
The spaceman. He often joked about coming from a planet called Jendel. He constantly threw out off-the-wall sayings like, "One by one, I kills 'em," and spoke in made-up languages and gibberish. Peter's makeup was elementary. The symbolism was direct, not abstract. He felt that over the course of his life, he'd gotten lucky during a few close calls and thus had 9 lives. You know, like a cat. The Catman suited him. The makeup allowed us to embody all the qualities of the English bands I idolized. It presented a cohesive look, a united feel, and at the same time offered the possibility of distinct personalities.
All right, here's where I start getting opinionated. Right there, Paul said it. Ace is a spaceman. Peter's the Catman. Later on, there's, what's going on right now as I record this, there's 2 people in that makeup that I am very against. I bitch about it constantly. And, but right there, Paul said it himself. Ace and Peter are the only 2 that should wear that makeup. They invented it, and they are it. Eric and Tommy. Tommy's no spaceman. He's like, he's a fake Freely. And Eric Singer is a copycat. And Eric Singer is a phenomenal drummer. I'm not putting nothing past him as being a lame drummer. He's great. He's just not Peter Criss, okay? He may be technically better than Peter Criss, but hey, man, Dio was better than Ozzy, and no matter where you stand, and I know a lot of people out there is, well, Sabbath Ozzy is better with Dio than Ozzy. Well, the legacy is Sabbath with Ozzy, okay? So technical shit doesn't mean anything. Anybody out there that likes stuff technically other than groove or, emotion, then that's your deal, but not mine. I love Peter Criss's drumming. He's an amazing drummer. And as you're going to hear, I'm fast-forwarding a lot through this book. I'm going right now from before the first album straight to Kiss Alive. And here's what Paul Stanley has to say about Peter Criss's drum solo on Kiss Alive.
One bone of contention as we put the finishing touches on the album was a long, boring drum solo. Soloing was not Peter's forte. He often sounded more like Ricky Ricardo playing the bongos than a rock and roll drummer playing a legitimate solo. Plus, a solo that might be riveting at a show when combined with effects and an audience could be mind-numbingly dull in record form. So we edited it. "If you don't put it back in," Peter told us, "I'm quitting the band." Sigh. Same old crap.
Sigh. Come on. That drum solo rules. And I know I'm breaking my own rule talking about musical opinion, but you know how many people were influenced to start playing drums because of that Kiss Alive drum solo on 100,000 Years? The guy was phenomenal. He was just phenomenal. And Ricky Ricardo? Come on, man. So he does a little bit of that, Latin little flavor in some parts of it with the cowbell and stuff. But it is an amazing, I think that was a low blow to Peter Criss as a drummer back in the 70s. Give me a break. That's just, oh man. I just had to throw an opinion alert here, but believe me, I look at how many people were influenced by Peter Criss as a drummer back in the day, back in the 70s. So many people started playing drums because of Peter Criss. And there's big time drummers now that praise Peter Criss, like Charlie Benante from Anthrax and Mike Portnoy, Dream Theater. I mean, those guys loved his drumming, thought he was very unorthodox, and even Neil Peart has said some nice things about Peter Criss's drumming. So, and that guy's hailed as one of the greatest rock drummers ever. So, Paul, give me a break on that shit. Anyway, I know a lot of people are going to listen to this saying, "Man, you left this part, you left that part out." Well, dude, I ain't got time to do this because now I'm going to do a huge leap. I'm going from Kiss Alive all the way to Unmasked now. If you want to know what goes on between that, and there's a lot of cool, interesting stories of Destroyer and Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun and Alive 2, where he says he didn't think side 4 was that great, which is kind of weird. But if you want to know all the inside stuff, get this book. I highly recommend it. So if I sit here and talk about every little thing he does, as I said, this will be a 10-hour show. So now I'm going to leap all the way forward to the Unmasked era, where he talks about where Eric Carr already joined the band and what happened when they were somewhere in Europe with Eric Carr. Poor guy, man. Here it goes.
The first night we were in Paris, Eric wore a brand new white suit to dinner, his first. Not 10 minutes into the night, he spilled a huge glass of red wine all over it. At times like that, he would close his eyes and mutter, "What a schmuck." He sent that suit to the cleaner so many times, hoping against hope the stain would come out, that when it finally came back white, the sleeves fell off when he put the jacket on. He was impressed that we could get by on a little pidgin version of the local language on that first tour across Europe. In Paris, he decided he wanted to try. "How do you ask for butter in French?" "Well," I said, "s'il vous plaît is please, and what you want is fapouge." The French word for butter is beurre. I made up the word fapouge. The waitress came over to our table and Eric said, "Fapouge, s'il vous plaît." She looked at him and said, "Fapouge?" He did this thing we used to call the Ronald Reagan, where his head would start to shake from side to side when he got nervous. He did that now. "Fapouge," he repeated with his head shaking. Another night, he really liked the food we'd had, which had come on a sizzling hot plate. Eric was still like Oliver Twist in those days. "Please, sir, may I have some more?" The waiter brought another searing hot plate, carrying it with tongs, and Eric reached up and grabbed it with his bare hands. You could hear the tss sound as it singed his fingers. He just closed his eyes and said, "What a schmuck." Another night in France, a guy at a nightclub started hitting on Eric, making him uncomfortable. He went over to Ace and said, "That guy over there is trying to come on to me." Ace, in his inimitable logic, said, "Let's make out so he thinks we're together. Then he'll leave you alone." And the kissing began. Armed military personnel guarded the airports in some parts of Europe back then. One time, at an airport where security had AK-47s, Eric got pulled aside. He was wearing a camouflage jumpsuit and bullet belts. They took him through a door and out of our sight, but he was back surprisingly quickly. "What happened?" we asked. "I told them I'm a musician," he said, "so they took me to another room and had me play a piano. Once he played a little piano, they let him go." Though Eric was 2 years older than me, he seemed like a kid. His life experience had been limited and he was naive and gullible. One night in England, he took a female journalist to his room from the hotel bar where we were all hanging out. The next day, we asked him what happened. "Well, we talked, and then she wanted to take some pictures of me without my clothes on," he said. "What?" I said. "She said she wouldn't print them." "Are you crazy?" "Oh, shit, did I do something wrong?" "You let her take pictures." "But she said they were just for herself." Sure enough, when the next week's issue of the Journalist magazine came out, there was Eric looking like an idiot, naked in the bathtub with his huge head of hair and a glass of champagne. He closed his eyes. What a schmuck.
Well, not much I can say about that clip. I don't know, for some reason I wanted to put that in there, and I just noticed it's a real long clip. But, he went through a little hazing, and, the way he portrayed Eric in this book wasn't that great, really. And there's a lot of things he says later on. I don't even want to bring it up. Read the book. You'll hear stuff he talks about Eric that it's kind of like, man, he ain't here to defend himself, but it's nowhere as near as what you're about to hear now about the late, great Bill Aucoin, the person that made Kiss Kiss, and what he says now, man, I can't, if it's true, it's terrible. If it's not true, then shame on you, Paul. But you know what? We're not hearing Bill Aucoin's side of it, so I am going to say the jury's out on this. I'm not one to judge unless I hear both sides. But, boy, if this is true, this is pretty bad. So this may be the most, dirt stuff in the whole book. This is really, really bad. This is what he had to say about Bill Aucoin in 1980 on the Unmasked tour in Australia, and also when they got back to the States.
In Australia, I began to seriously question Bill Aucoin. His cocaine use had become more extreme, and since splitting up with Sean Delaney, his general behavior had become reckless too. One morning I went to his room and found a boy in his early teens eating a bowl of cereal in Bill's bed. Another morning I found a different boy there. Bill was out of control. When we got back to the States, a boy who had won a contest had been flown in to meet us, along with a photographer from the magazine that had sponsored the contest. Bill was clearly hitting on the kid. The next day I said, "Bill, tell me you didn't." "Yes, I did, and the photographer." Bill had crossed a line into an area I saw as criminal and immoral. I was no longer laughing.
Now, if that's true, that is messed up, and there's no way I can defend that behavior, but I don't know if it's true or not, actually. Bill Aucoin never got caught with kiddie porn or doing anything with a kid, but you never know. People do probably go through life doing fucked up shit like that and never get caught, so that is unfortunate. All right, this next clip, we're going to fast forward when Creatures of the Night, the failure of Creatures of the Night, it was their worst-selling album, and they were playing to, I saw that tour. That was the very first time I saw Kiss, and it wasn't a packed place. It was at West Palm Beach Auditorium. It wasn't packed, and but here he's talking about when, after the dismal American tour, they went to Rio and played to the most people they ever played to ever in Rio. And then I have a little rant to say after this clip.
In June 1983, we flew to Brazil and played to 180,000 screaming fans in Maracanã Stadium in Rio. It was the biggest audience we had ever performed in front of. And yet, as exhilarating as it was to play those venues, the writing was on the wall. It was only a matter of how the dominoes were going to fall, not whether they would fall. We could still play the biggest stadiums in South America, but we were in a very shaky position in North America.
Now here's my rant. History is repeating itself as I record this, okay? Kiss is playing stadiums everywhere around the world, and here they're not. In order for them to play big venues, they have to play with a co-headlining act. They did a summer tour back in 2016 at, in cities, not the big cities. They were playing in, places that don't really have shows much, and even those shows weren't sold out. I've had many arguments online with people saying, I was at that show and it was sold out. Well, I don't know if they're lying or not, or if the polls I see online are lying, because every show that I've seen, the attendance wasn't sold out. But, it was somewhat packed, but I wouldn't expect less. If I lived in some fucking town that no shows came to, I'd go to see Kiss, Well, of course, if I'm a Kiss fan. But that's what's happening right now. Kiss cannot play big venues. Kiss cannot play Madison Square Garden anymore. I know they did on the Sonic Boom tour, but they can't do it no more. They can't play big places. They have to co-headline. And do you think really Kiss wants to share the money to a co-headlining tour? No, but they're forced to do it in order for them to play big places. They have to tour with Motley Crue or Aerosmith or Poison. That's exactly what's happening right now. And you won't hear about that in this book, but you're going to hear it right now on this podcast. And I know some people out there are getting upset with me, but I'm right. I'm right. If Kiss was as huge as a lot of you defenders think they are, then why aren't they out there alone? Why aren't they out there touring alone and playing Madison Square Garden and all those amphitheaters alone? No, they have to go overseas to play big places, just like the Creatures of the Night tour. Now here's Paul saying something that you've never heard him say until Eric and Tommy. I get Ace and Tommy confused because they wear the same goddamn makeup. But this is him saying something, and I know it's a little prelude to how he defends this current lineup of Kiss. This is why Ace and Peter their makeup is with those other two members. This is his defense.
With the new characters, we were one step removed from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, what the hell was Vinny's Ankh about? Rather than keeping the original personas and images alive, we had become a ridiculous menagerie. What was next? Turtle Boy?
And there you have it. His excuse to have Tommy and Eric in Ace and Peter's makeup because it won't work with other makeup. And you know, as us diehard fans that are against the Scabs, we would love to see them in different makeup or in no makeup at all. But the truth of the matter is that Kiss cannot sell without those iconic people in that makeup. And something that, you know, oh, Tommy's the spaceman, Eric's the Catman. No, they're not. Ace and Peter are the spaceman and Catman because, as you heard before, it's part of their persona, it's part of their personality. But you know what? I don't know. Tommy probably would look good as Turtle Boy. Or how about Pizza Boy? Or Pasta Boy? I know he used to bring him that. I know you're all getting mad, you Scab lovers. But don't worry, I say some nice things about Paul later on. But again, I know a main complaint, I can already smell it. I smell it from here. A main complaint is how I don't really review this book. I only talk about certain little parts. So this is a huge fast forward too, because I don't even talk about when they took off the makeup or the non-makeup years at all until Eric's death. And this is the next clip. It's about the funeral. Now, in their defense, just like in Bill Aucoin's offense, the rumor is, and I don't know how true it is, that Eric Carr, when he died and he was in the hospital, Kiss didn't pay his insurance, and they kicked him out of the band ruthlessly. In this book, he denies it. He doesn't deny the insurance part, but he denies how Eric was kicked out of the band. What Paul said is, look, get better. We're going to go on without you, and then when you're good, you'll be back in the band. Basically what he was saying. He really did think Eric Carr was going to beat the cancer. So, but unfortunately, Eric Carr passed away, and now this next clip is him going into... Oh, you know what? Before I even go to this, so some of you won't get upset, there's a lot of juicy stuff Paul slams Gene on during the non-makeup years, how he was coasting and he was more interested in movies and outside projects, and he really does slam Gene a lot. So, and I feel he's right, even though like there's some Gene songs I like. I did a thing on the Almost Human 56 page where I named my favorite Gene songs and my favorite Paul songs from Animalize up to Hot in the Shade, because those were the coasting years. And in my opinion, and I know some people shared it on the comments I got on that video, it was a tie. I believe it was 9 or 10 songs each. I didn't think Paul did more cool songs than Gene and vice versa, but that's just what do you call a musical opinion. But boy, Gene was pretty good when he was coasting, as good as Paul in my opinion. But it is true, Paul did carry the weight, and he released all the hits during that era, but hits are not science. So here we go. This is after Eric Carr passes away, and Gene and Paul go to Eric's funeral.
The scent of flowers was overwhelming. You could barely breathe. But I could also smell hostility all around us, people bristling at our presence. Peter and Ace were there. Peter, who everyone knew resented and disliked Eric, tried to tell me that Eric had been calling him all the time. Nothing seemed to make sense. Eric's girlfriend was also filled with anger at me and Gene. It turned out that Eric had painted us as the bad guys. He said we'd booted him out of the band and didn't support him, which simply wasn't true. Everyone there seemed to have the impression that Eric had been cut off, but he hadn't been cut off. Once we told him we were going to record Revenge, he cut himself off from us. I didn't feel like the bad guy, and it was strange to be treated that way.
Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to say that they kicked him out and that Eric was right, but I'm not here to say that Paul's right. I don't know. I'm going to stay neutral on this, but you know, the one impression I got in this book is that Paul really, he can do no wrong. You know, everything, he can't do no wrong. But here's a rare instant in this book where he does actually feel like he did something wrong. And it is after Eric Carr's funeral. This is what he had to say.
In the wake of Eric Carr's death, I continued to spend a lot of time wondering whether I had handled things correctly. Though I thought I had made the best choices at the time, I began to realize I'd been wrong. We had cut Eric off in perhaps the worst way by denying him what mattered to him most, his place in Kiss. That had been lost on me while we continued to do everything we thought was important, everything we thought we could and should do. It was wrong to keep Eric from the thing he loved most, what for him was a lifeline, Kiss. And I should have seen that since the band functioned the same way for me and I wasn't even sick. I should have known.
Well, there you go. He did feel some remorse because, one part of the book, Eric went to go see the Paul Stanley solo tour where Eric Singer played drums, and backstage he told Eric, you're going to replace me. And Paul was like, what are you talking about? And it turned out he was right. All right, now we're going to fast forward more. I'm going to fast forward through Revenge and through, I don't remember him talking about Kiss Alive 3. But let's just go straight to the Unplugged session when they played the Unplugged. And this is what he had to say about what he heard about Peter Criss at the time.
I had heard secondhand stories about how much Peter's playing had deteriorated, how his various bands weren't very good. But there was an exciting and surreal sense of nostalgia in the room when they entered. Peter seemed to have completely lost it. He had become your slightly nutty uncle. He came in with some silly miniature tribal drums that he held in one hand and boinked with a stick. He wanted to hit them while he sang Beth. We nixed that idea.
All right, so he already knew Peter Criss wasn't up to snuff, but here's one thing that anybody that was a Kiss fan back in those days, the non-makeup days, Paul constantly said in interviews when they asked him about a makeup reunion, he always said he wouldn't do it, all the way up to like briefly before this, because I know there's a question they asked him in a Latin TV show during the Kiss My Ass era, which I think is like, really before they're saying no way. There's no way. I don't see why we should go back to a reunion. It's just it's not going to happen. He always denied it. Gene as well. There's never going to be a Kiss reunion, so don't even think about it. But all of a sudden, Unplugged happened, and he said this bullshit.
When the show was aired in August 1995, it proved to be the second most viewed MTV Unplugged in the history of the show. Almost as soon as it aired, speculation about a full-on reunion started to brew. To me, there seemed to be sufficient good feelings to explore the possibility. In fact, I saw it as a logical next step. Also, given the well-documented car accidents and other brushes with death that Ace and Peter seemed to constantly have, the window for a reunion might shut sooner rather than later, as far as I was concerned. One of these guys was sure to kick the bucket, and if there ever would be a time to get back together, it was now. I also thought a reunion might provide closure. When the band broke apart, we were all young and stupid. Maybe we could get back together having learned from life, and everyone would see the band for the gift it was. Maybe we could see it through to the end and ride off into the sunset together, a band, a team, one for all and all for one, until we called it quits on our own terms.
Yeah, right. What happened, what really happened, you could just, from the outside, it's so obvious. Peter and Ace got up on stage, and the place went apeshit. And they saw the reaction people had, and they wanted it. The people wanted it. At the time, Kiss was struggling. Revenge, even though it was a return to form, and a lot of people out there love it, I feel it's overrated, but that's just a personal opinion. But it's not a personal opinion when I say the Revenge tour wasn't that great. I mean, it didn't sell well in most markets. It probably did in some. But I didn't go see it because I chose Megadeth and Suicidal. It was on the same day, Halloween of 92, I think. They played the Miami Arena. My buddies went, and from their account, they said it was not even close to full. And I heard a lot of other markets were the same way. Now, I ended up seeing a video of it. I have it on bootleg. And I got to say, I wish I went to that Kiss show. Because that Revenge show, what I saw at the Miami Arena from a bootleg, that shit was awesome. They played Parasite, Watching You. It was just a smoking show. The Megadeth show was good, but I should have went to Kiss instead. Because that was awesome. So, in no way I'm bashing, the Revenge era, because I thought that tour was badass, what I saw with the Statue of Liberty and the skull and all that. It was great. All right, now we're going to go into the reunion, okay? This is already, problems are starting before the reunion tour even starts. And, I have a clip that's not in the book to talk about this clip.
Not surprisingly, it took a lot of wrangling with Peter and Ace's representative to get a deal in place. Ace insisted on getting more money than Peter because, as Ace put it, Peter wasn't worth as much as he was. Peter hasn't done anything, Ace insisted. He hasn't been playing, and I'm more famous than he is. Of course, this was all behind Peter's back. For all the times Ace threw Peter under the bus, he should have had muscles like a professional bodybuilder. And yet Peter still saw Ace as his teammate and buddy, no matter how many times Ace offered Peter up as a sacrificial lamb.
See, I'm not sure if Paul got the timeline wrong, because according to Peter Criss, that didn't happen. It happened later on. Peter wrote in his book that he was betrayed by Ace because Ace was making more money than him. And he didn't tell him till, there was like 5 or 6 shows left. Seems like Ace's conscience got to him and told him to come upstairs or some hotel. And that's when he told Peter he was making more money than him. And Peter was very hurt, betrayed by it. And so here's Peter Criss on the Eddie Trunk show. And it's basically Eddie Trunk doing all the talking, but he's talking to Peter. And Peter does admit that this is pretty contradicting to what Paul Stanley said would happen in the reunion negotiations.
In the beginning of that process for the reunion, you actually give him credit for saying that they right in front of everybody wanted to give you the least amount of money.
Absolutely.
And then you were walking away from it.
Absolutely.
For people who haven't read the book. Mm-hmm. And then Ace says, hold on, pulls you into a room, the two of you and your mutual manager, and says, we're going to cut his commission, that's going to go to you, and we're going to make the same money and go out in 96, and that's it. So in a way, at that point, Ace kind of saved the day because you were ready to bail, right?
Absolutely.
Now, personally, I don't see how Peter Criss would lie about that, because, I don't know, unless Ace said to his manager, just say we're doing it and I'm still making more. So in that way, I'll give it to Paul that he's telling the truth. But if that's not the case, then seems like Ace did save the day on that. But I want to be very neutral on this. I really do want to be. I don't want to just come out here and just slander Paul on everything and say he's a liar, even though there is a part during the Animalized era in the book. He talked about how Mark St. John, because of his hand injury, never played one show with Kiss. Not one, he said, where actually he did. Because I have a bootleg audio of it. And it may have even been, I could be wrong, but I think even on Bruce Kulick interview I saw, Bruce said that Mark also played half a show and Bruce Kulick played the other half. So maybe he played 1.5, but I know for sure he played one. Anyway, here is a little clip that what Paul thinks of Ace and Peter when they were rehearsing for the reunion show.
I was shocked to see the full extent of the deterioration in these guys, the disrespect they had for their talents and gifts. Fortunately, by the 90s, you could hit a Coke bottle with a stick and make it sound explosive and powerful if you put enough effects on it. And that's exactly what we did. We put triggers on each individual drum, so when Peter hit one, it activated a pre-recorded drum sound. Although Peter had played with fire in the 70s, he was a shadow of himself now.
Okay, I saw the reunion tour. I saw 3 out of the 4 shows at Madison Square Garden, and I saw the Miami Arena show, and I gotta say, those Madison Square Garden shows was the best time I saw Kiss. The best time, hands down. The energy, the vibe, the whole thing was just, I mean, goddamn, it's the original Kiss. I wanted to see it. It was great. But I will say, yes, there was a lot of triggers in Peter's drumming, and I noticed it wasn't the same Peter Criss of the 70s. And I'm not here to say it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't matter. It was still a great fucking show. Regardless, I noticed Peter Criss, wasn't like the Peter Criss of the 70s. But at the same time, Paul is like slamming them. Let's fast forward to today. I mean, let me play a clip of Paul Stanley doing the intro to Heaven's on Fire years back, and let's hear the difference between then and now, and let's talk about deterioration. All right, that was Paul Stanley. I believe that's a farewell tour, so I'm not even going all the way to the 80s. Look how great his voice sounded in 2000. Now let's listen to him now, and let's listen to how he is a shadow of his former self. And notice a guy in the audience is yelling, "Don't do it, Paul."
Don't do it, Paul.
Now, mind you, Paul wrote this book when his voice was already sounding like this. So it's kind of like, I can understand when his voice was still kicking ass and he wrote this book, but his voice is shot. And I got some more examples later on before I end this of how shot his... I'm going to dig into the Vieira Vault and play a Paul Stanley Now song so you can hear how terrible it is. But I got a couple more examples too. But now here's Paul after or near the end of the reunion tour. Ace and Peter are like, wait a second, we want more money. So this is what Paul has to say about that one.
At the end of the tour in July 1997, Peter and Ace demanded to be made full members of the band again. "We did things your way," Peter said, "and we had a huge successful tour. Now we want to be equals." Being stunned by one of these guys was an almost daily occurrence, but this dropped my jaw. Don't you realize the reason it was a big success is because you had no input and no say?
Now listen, they probably had no input and say as far as the tour logistics, but come on. You think that reunion would have been huge without Ace and Peter? If it would have been just the Paul and Gene show it is today? Because look how that show's going. Can that tour sell out 4 days at Madison Square Garden, play Dodger Stadium, play, in Detroit? Believe me, those two was the reason it was a huge success as much as Gene and Paul. Actually, it was more of a reason it was a success. Let's say Peter and Ace would have went out on their own, which they did before the tour. They only played clubs. And Gene and Paul were bigger because it's under the Kiss brand. It's under the Kiss name. But it was because of it's because of Ace and Peter. It was this huge juggernaut of a tour. It was the original four that did it, not just Gene and Paul. Though Gene and Paul does deserve more money because they are the ones that were in the band and organized the thing, and they were more behind the scenes than those two. So I'm not here to say that Ace and Peter deserve the money, but don't say it's because of you two that tour became huge. They were right. I mean, they got a little greedy, which I admit, but at the same time, don't say they had no input as far as getting asses in those seats. But I do agree with Paul as far as getting the lion's share. And here's a clip of something I totally agree with.
Peter and Ace were upset because they were now rich again, but not as rich as me and Gene. There were people richer than I was, and I didn't lose sleep over it. And anyway, I deserved more than Peter and Ace did. I stayed when they left.
Damn straight. Paul busted his ass for Kiss for decades, and these two didn't. and they made millions. So I have to see, I'm not so one-sided here. When the truth comes out, the truth comes out. Paul deserved more money than Ace and Peter. They shouldn't have been equal members. They didn't really bust their ass for Kiss as far as staying in the band. And also, Gene and Paul were the ones dealing with Doc McGee and all the logistics going on the tour. So definitely I am on Paul's side on this. But the honeymoon with Paul now is over, because here's Paul talking about the farewell tour, which, by the way, I gotta say, I saw the farewell tour and it did suck. I thought it was terrible. But here's Paul talking about that farewell tour.
Not surprisingly, the shows could be pretty awful. I was angry at Peter and Ace for being disrespectful toward everything we had accomplished and everything the fans were giving us. I bought into the idea that this really was it, the end of Kiss. There was no place to go. It was unbearable.
Speaking of unbearable, and yes, I do agree, that was an unbearable show, and Paul Stanley was great on the farewell tour, vocally. But speaking of unbearable, why don't we come to 2017 and how Paul sounds now? Again.
It would have been great to go out in a blaze of musical glory. Instead, we were dragging our asses.
Let me tell you something. As bad as that farewell tour was, they were dragging their asses more in that last clip you just heard. I don't think anybody can deny this guy's voice is fucking shot. And that clip was from 2017, this year. Okay, so, all right, let's go to the next clip. This is Paul Stanley talking about Peter Criss left the farewell tour. He didn't finish it because I guess contracts went to shit again. So he called Eric Singer. So this is what he has to say about that.
I called Eric Singer just as I told Peter I would. To Peter's shock, the tour would go on. And Eric would wear the Catman makeup. At that point, it was clear that compromising the four iconic characters had been a mistake the first time around, and we wouldn't repeat it. The Catman, the Demon, the Spaceman, and the Star Child were far more important than Peter, Gene, Ace, and Paul. Nobody in Kiss is irreplaceable, and I definitely include myself in that calculation.
Yeah, you stay in the band. Yeah, later on, I'm going to have a clip. The last clip on the show, on his book, he talks about, I'm going to be replaced one day. There is no better time than now. You're the one that is going to say, Peter can't cut it anymore, and that's why he's not in the band. Well, you can't cut it anymore either. Paul said many times during the farewell tour, I don't want to be that band that stays too long in the party. Well, the party's been over for you for a while.
The reality of playing without Peter was freeing. Peter was marginal when the reunion started, and his playing had gone downhill since. His drum solos were an embarrassment.
To be honest with you, his drum solo at the farewell tour, I thought was a little better than the reunion tour. I didn't see Psycho Circus. That didn't come to Miami. But believe it or not, I didn't think Peter Criss was great or anything on the farewell tour. And as I said, I didn't like the farewell tour much, but I thought Peter Criss played a little better than he did on the reunion tour. So to call his drum solo an embarrassment, which it wasn't that great, but it was nowhere as embarrassing as this. Oh, wow, 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 wow. Holy mackerel. Man, is that painful. Now here's a real funny, this is probably the funniest thing he said in the whole damn book. What's his excuse to go back on what he said about the farewell tour? Oh, this is rich. Of all people to tell him to continue Kiss, a car washer?
One afternoon later in 2002, I took my car to the car wash and one of the workers said to me, Paul, the farewell tour was great. When are you doing the 30th anniversary tour? What? That would be okay? You mean you still want us? The guy at the car wash really opened my eyes. He still loved the band. He wanted to know what was next. I'm the one closing the door. I'm the one throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But why? All of a sudden, I wondered what we were really saying farewell to. Maybe the farewell tour was better envisioned as a farewell to those two guys. A farewell to compromising ourselves musically. A farewell to drama. The idea of throwing it all away because of a pair of jerks who never valued the band suddenly seemed crazy. We had existed without them before. Now, because those two had come back into the fold, I was going to let them have their way by causing the demise of Kiss? Why stop now? We had built the band back and people had embraced it. Hell, put on a good show and Kiss could go on for another 200 years. And without the weak links, this band could put on a great show. I didn't want to give up something I'd spent 30 years busting my ass for. I'm not done.
Yes, you are. Wowzers. Okay. In the book, he describes after the farewell tour, they got offered a tour, a co-headlining tour with Aerosmith, but they had to do it with 3 original members. So, guess Ace didn't want to do it, so they got Peter back in the band to do that tour. And I know that Peter and Tommy Thayer stayed for a while. And by the way, yes, I know it's very contradicting and hypocritical how Peter Criss slams these two people in the makeup, yet he had no problem doing the tour with Tommy Thayer and Ace makeup. So, anybody out there that think I'm being biased, even though I've already proven that I'm not biased, yeah, Peter Criss had no problem touring with Kiss without Ace, even though he claimed he missed it, but he still did it. But anyway, eventually Peter did get fired, and here is Paul Stanley talking about Peter getting fired.
When the tour was over and Peter's contract expired, I told him we had decided not to renew his contract. You're not happy. You say the shows are too long. Your hands hurt. You want to play other kinds of music. We want to continue. I think it's best for everyone if we just call it quits, Peter. It's time for us all to move on. I didn't have much to say beyond that. It wasn't that we were just going to become a different Kiss or a new Kiss. We were going to become a better Kiss.
Okay, here's another clip of Peter Criss on the Eddie Trunk Show, not part of the book, obviously, saying his side of what Paul just said.
And I was sure, get right to it. I got a call from Paul the following day after I posted what I had to post on my site because I was flooded by a ton of people. And how you doing? And it got to be that they wanted to start a new Kiss. And I'm like, well, what do you mean new Kiss? And, well, there's a new Kiss. And it really got down that he almost said I was too old to cut it. I couldn't play 2 hours anymore. They felt that their camp wanted some younger blood, that they wanted to do new stuff. Between you and me, a bunch of bunk. I didn't buy it for one instant. I'm listening to this, that I'm too old. I can't play this anymore. I was complaining. If I complained about anything, I complain about a lot of things, and I have a reason to complain about anything I complain about. You know me too well. I don't just complain about everything. But the idea of the audacity to tell me that I, a founding member of a band that would not be here today, there is no old Kiss. There's only one Kiss, and that's Peter, Paul, Ace, and Gene.
All right, so again, I'll have to say jury out. That's two sides of the story. Paul said, you're too old to drum anymore, and we can't have you anymore. And Paul said kind of like, in a different way. But either way, both did admit Paul did call him and fired him. Anyway, as far as Kiss's Paul, Gene, and Ace and Peter, my opinion, and it's just my opinion, my favorite Kiss is 70s Kiss with those four, yes. But I loved the Creatures of the Night, The Elder, Asylum, and Monster. I like all eras, I just hate the makeup thing, but so I may think 70s Kiss is the best. The original four, yes, they can't be beat. That I will admit, but I loved Vinnie Vincent in the band, and Bruce Kulick on an album, and Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer. I think they're all great. I wish they would be without makeup, but, you know, money-wise, financially, it'd be a train wreck. Kind of like how they are in the States now. What's Kiss going to do next? I mean, they're going to play a show. I know they just played a festival somewhere, I think in Chicago, but a full-blown tour, you know, where they're on their own. Is that ever going to happen again when it's not in just rural cities? Are they ever going to do a full-blown tour again? Who knows? All right, and this next clip is Paul's explanation for Kiss today with those two scabs.
The idea that we would stop using any of the four iconic images was as ridiculous as the idea that we would stop playing any of the songs. Interestingly, years before, when we decided to try to buy the rights to the Catman and Spaceman images, Peter and Ace dealt their characters away as if they had no value. To them, they were mere bargaining chips. The fact that they so readily relinquished them showed me how little they cared about them. I was glad that those guys couldn't start turning up at Halloween conventions signing autographs in tattered Kiss outfits and makeup. I valued the images and wanted to protect them.
I don't understand that logic. You don't want them to own the makeup because that way they won't go to conventions in the makeup. Like what you're doing now is any better. Now, I'll give them this. For Ace and Peter to sell their makeup, and I know a lot of people saying that Ace rented the makeup and he's going to get it back or whatever. I don't know about that. All I know is that there's two people in that makeup, and to me it sounds like they both fucking forfeited it, and I don't dig it. I don't like it, and I blame Ace and Peter for the scabs as well. I blame all four, okay? But the fact is, Gene and Paul are just like parading it out, so that's kind of lame. Anyway, so, but again, I don't understand his logic. Like, I wouldn't want Ace and Peter to own the makeup because they'll wear it at a Halloween convention or whatever. Yeah, it may be lame, but can it be any lamer than it is now? I actually think it's lamer now, but that's my personal opinion. All right, here is more of Paul's babble.
All my feelings of love and pride for Kiss were amplified by starting to tour with Tommy and Eric as permanent members. I could never go back to the drama, the lowered standards, the disrespect for the craft. It would be whoring myself. It was amazing to have people in the band whose mentality was, what can I do to make the band bigger? Instead of, what can I do to make myself bigger? But if you make the latter your priority, it doesn't work. With Ace and Peter, that's the way it was. With Tommy and Eric, there was a work ethic. And it started with taking pride in what they did individually and what we did as a team. Of course, a certain segment of the audience didn't want the reunion era to be finished. People occasionally dismissed Eric and Tommy as imposters, but when I stood on stage with them, I had the opposite impression. If anyone had been imposters, it was Peter and Ace during the reunion tours.
Oh, really? Ace and Peter are imposters of makeup they came up with? Gee, I wonder who was the person that said on the farewell tour press junket about who should wear the makeup. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's Paul, and here's that clip.
We had just come back from doing South America and playing to the largest crowds we'd ever played in makeup. We played 200,000 people in Brazil and a huge stadium tour. And at that point, we had to look at each other because it really wasn't the original lineup anymore. And we didn't feel honest or comfortable with the makeup anymore because in hindsight, the makeup really belonged to the original lineup in the sense that we created it and it should only be worn by us.
Contradiction. You know, that clip right there from the farewell junket, I used it on this video I made called Kiss Deluded on YouTube that got a lot of hits, and the attention of Dee Snider when he was having that war with Paul Stanley, and Eddie Trunk put it up. I believe they both put it up on their Twitter to show the hypocrisy of this guy. And the funny thing about the diluted video, I put it up and there's not one part of the video where I talk. All I show is there's another interview with Gene's talking about only Ace and Peter can wear the makeup. And then I showed the scab kiss. And then I showed Paul saying that clip you just heard now. And then another footage of Eric Singer singing Beth. And I'm not in that video at all. It's just them talking. And I put it up. And there was so many Kiss defenders that attacked me, saying, and I'm like, I didn't even talk. I didn't even say anything in that video. You're attacking me over what your heroes just said. Anyway, here's another defending the scab kiss clip from Paul.
I always wanted the audience to feel that we surpassed their expectations, and it had been a long time since we had been able to do that. With Tommy and Eric, we did it. The band could sing so well, in fact, that people constantly asked whether we used pre-recorded background vocals. Nope.
Excuse me? People actually went up to you and say, did you guys play pre-recorded because you guys sing so well? Well, Gene, Eric, and Tommy sing fine, but really? Listening to this, they think it's pre-recorded?
I got a dog episode. And I got birds that sing. You're gonna kill your voice.
I love how Gene says, you're gonna kill your voice. Alright, this is the last clip. This is how his book ends. And this has to be the biggest bullshit ever. But it's more prediction of my part. This is something that hasn't happened yet. But here is Paul explaining. And Eddie Trunk falls for this. A lot of people fall. Everybody thinks there's going to be a kiss without Paul and Gene. But here's Paul saying this because here's the bottom line. Paul says that Kiss is going to go on without him. He's just saying it as an excuse for Eric and Tommy to be in Ace and Peter's makeup. So that's his way of saying, anybody can wear the makeup, even the Star Child. But let me tell you something. In these clips, these audio clips I've played with you singing now, come on. It's time for him to go. And why doesn't he go? Because he's not going anywhere. Mark my words. I know it hasn't happened yet, and he keeps threatening that Kiss is going to go on without him. But here's my prediction. If it does happen, it will be like maybe a Vegas residency. But if it actually goes out on tour, which might happen, I'm not saying it won't happen, but it won't last. He thinks it's going to last without him. And here's him talking about it.
20 or 30 years ago, I couldn't imagine the world without me, much less the band. But at some point, you can't ignore the reality of your own mortality. I won't be physically capable of performing in Kiss forever. Something I've come to understand, though, is that I'm not immortal. The band is. Nowadays, I don't confuse my role in the world or the band. I realize that Kiss could and should go on without me. Kiss isn't like other bands. We've never subscribed to the limitations other bands impose on themselves. People come to see the characters we created and what those characters represent. It's not me they're coming to see, but what I embody. There was a time when people said nobody in this band could be replaced. It had to be the four of us. Well, they're already 50% wrong. And they're going to find out at some point that they're 75% wrong and then 100% wrong. I'm objective enough about myself to realize that no matter how good I am, and I think I'm damn good, there's somebody else out there who can do something equally valid. I think that being replaced would be a huge compliment, not a detriment. It's part of what I hope we've built, an ideal that goes far beyond me. Causes go on, Political parties go on without their founders. I think someone could come along who would be capable of carrying the flag just as well, if not better. Someone who can build on the foundation. I look forward to the day that I'm replaced in KISS. Not because I want to leave, but because it will prove I'm right. KISS is bigger than any of its members.
Yeah, and you don't wear a wig. Such a bullshit story, and it's just him defending this bullshit that's going on now. But anyway, I know I went off on Paul, but you saw me defend him here and there, and I even slammed everybody in the band. I'm not trying to be biased here, and I think I haven't been biased. I think I've been very fair, but man, I pointed out, come on, man. I know there's a lot of people out there upset because you're just blind sheep. See, my favorite band of all time is Black Sabbath. And what they did to Bill Ward was fucked up, okay? And I'm not defending, I didn't go see that Black Sabbath farewell shit. Because, even my gods, and I'm not, let me tell you something, if there's any band I'm going to be blind to, it's Black Sabbath. With Ozzy and Bill Ward and Geezer Butler and Tony Iommi, those are my gods. You take one of them out. But the whole thing with KISS is that I can accept KISS without Peter and Ace. I can. I just can't accept them with people with Peter and Ace makeup on. And I'm not alone out there. And it has affected the U.S. market, whether anybody out there wants to admit it or not. You're going to take pictures of KISS in stadiums in Europe going, yeah, right, they're failing. Well, you could have done the same picture in Rio and during the Creatures tour and saying, yeah, right, KISS is failing. They were failing back then in the U.S., and they're failing now. So, anyway, this is the end of it, but as I do have a song to play. It's going to be very torturous to hear Paul sing it, but before I play that song from the Vieira Vault, I am going to put a clip that Paul said toward the end of the book that I think I should put on here because it's fucking awesome. And it shows a really killer thing I love about Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons also, I gotta say, got a lot of shit for wanting to copyright the horns, which I just think he said it in passing. And then he said later on, no, I don't want to copyright it. And everybody attacks him when he's a piece of crap he is, and he's so money hungry, like money's bad. Everybody out there that says he's so money hungry, yeah, like you never played the lotto. And a lot of you guys download music for free, and you're hypocrites. So I do defend Gene Simmons. I think Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are great people when it comes to this. All that other bullshit you heard in this whole show, I throw it all in the trash. All of it. Because this, to me, is the best thing Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, you got to put them both in this example. This shows you, and I wanted to end my clips with this clip of Paul Stanley, showing that he is a good guy. Check this out.
At a concert in St. Louis in 2012, I had arranged complimentary meet and greet tickets for a young man incapacitated by ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. He couldn't move or speak, but I thought I detected the hint of a smile in his eyes when we took photos with him. Also in the VIP tent that afternoon was a married couple who were buying an electric guitar I would play later that night on stage. Following our unplugged set, I talked to the man and woman for a while and determined how they wanted their guitar inscribed. After the wheelchair-bound man with ALS left the tent, the husband of the couple turned to me and said, "We bought a second guitar for that young man." That stopped me in my tracks. The guitars I sell are intended for collectors and cost thousands of dollars. This couple didn't know the man in the wheelchair. They didn't know what his ailment was or anything else about him. They had simply seen him across the room. I told them I was moved by their gesture. "We're very lucky people," explained the husband. "We like to pay it forward." Their reward was the act of giving. Mine was to reimburse them the cost of the guitar. That same year, I met a woman in San Antonio who came to the show to celebrate her cancer being in remission for a year. Another night, coming off stage in Las Vegas, a police officer came up to me with a huge smile on his face. Destroyer was my first album, he said. The show was amazing. Oh my God, I can die now. Please don't, I said. And then we hugged. I know I'm not Florence Nightingale, and obviously Kiss never was and still isn't a philanthropic movement or a humanitarian effort. We're 4 guys who play instruments. We're a rock band. And yet to realize our band can be an inspiration and raise awareness and contribute significant sums to worthy causes like the Wounded Warrior Project and various cancer charities is both humbling and deeply rewarding. Early in Kiss's career, I thought it was cool to see people at the shows having fun. Now I see the part I play in making them happy and find that very fulfilling. The time and consideration I can give to people who, for instance, are returning from military service or have gone through tough times of one kind or another, means so much to me now. It was nice when I was young, but it didn't go to the core of my being the way it does now. The more opportunity I have to treat people the way I wished I myself had been treated, the better I feel. It's also amazing how little it takes to have a huge effect on someone's life. It's tempting to say it would be sinful not to take advantage of such opportunities, but then again, there's a selfish element to it. I feel that I gain as much as the other person. I've taken some big leaps in my life, and the biggest ones have been in the past 15 years. Learning the value of kindness was a gift that came to me late, but it changed the game. Doing for others is now the most satisfying thing in my life, the gift I never knew. It's fulfilling in a way I could never have imagined when I was young.
Right on, Paul. And you know, there's also a story out there where there was this little kid, sick kid, that Gene Simmons went to go visit before he passed away, and he brought him a bunch of Kiss stuff, and Gene Simmons was his hero. And the very next day, the child named Dylan passed away, and Gene Simmons went and visited him before he died. And I think that is better than all this bullshit about being money hungry and cutthroat and all that stuff. They do good things, and that Wounded Warrior thing is great. And Gene visiting that kid, I'm not sure if that was part of a Make-A-Wish Foundation, but I personally have donated to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I really support that. That's like my favorite thing to donate to. It's www.wish.org. And man, any little bit will do, man. That's such a great organization. There's people terminal out there that they get their last wish in life, and I think it's just a great thing. And so is all these organizations. And as I understand, I've heard that Gene Simmons donates to charities where he doesn't promote it. I've heard that from the inside. Somewhere I've heard it. And I'm sure Paul does it as well. And that, to me, to be a humanitarian is better than just being a bullshit. You may be a bullshit artist, but if you help people, you're all right in my book. So after this Bash Fest, I just wanted to say that, you know, I wanted to end it with something nice about Paul, but now I'm going to play a clip where he sounds like shit. But before I even do that, I just want to say that I am a huge fan of Kiss. I have been since I've been 12, 13 years old. Ever since my buddy played me I Want You on his turntable, I became an instant fan, and I bought double platinum, and then Rock and Roll Over, Kiss Alive 2. Huge, huge fan of Kiss. There's a lot of stuff they've done that I don't like, a lot of albums they've done I don't like, but man, 70s stuff, I love it all. Except for Gene's solo album. But, you know, I even like Peter Criss's solo album for the most part, the 78 solo album. And Paul Stanley, to me, is a genius. I know I said it earlier in the show. You know, I Want You, Come On and Love Me, to me, is like the perfect, simple song, but it's effective and it's great, and I love it. KISS stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. And I just love Kiss. I'm a big fan of Kiss. I got my ass kicked for liking Kiss by Led Zeppelin fans. Even me trying to tell them, oh, I like Led Zeppelin too, didn't help. But and I have a lot of friends I have that hate Kiss. A lot of people on my friends list hate Kiss. But I don't care, man. I love Kiss, and I defend Kiss. I am part of the Kiss Army, though I am a vocal part of the Kiss Army, and I am not alone. Because there's many ranks out there that think like I do. all you people that are listening are offended by what I'm saying, you know damn well I'm not alone. And anybody out there that defends Kiss now, that's fine. But if you defend it without seeing the truth, then you got problems, my friend. Because I will tell you right now, Ace Frehley is lazy. Okay? Or he was lazy and he was a drug addict and he caused a lot of problems. He didn't play on Sweet Pain because he wanted to go to a card game instead. Even though I heard the Ace Frehley solo on Destroyer Resurrected and I was like, shit, they should have kept this in. I love it. But then again, that's because I'm a blind Ace Frehley fan, you know, and I just love his guitar playing. To me, he's my favorite member of Kiss, but yet my favorite Kiss song is Young and Wasted that doesn't feature Ace Frehley. And I love all facets of Kiss. Just every lineup did something I liked. You know, Animalize, there's like 4 songs on Animalize I like. And that's a different lineup with Mark St. John. Only lasted 1 album. So I can just say when it comes to Kiss, the good definitely outweigh the bad musically as far as albums go. I like way more Kiss albums than I don't like. But just because I point out things, I get attacked a lot on the Almost Human 56 YouTube page, which is almost at 5 million views as I record this. A lot of people on there. I'd say 98% of them are cool motherfuckers that some don't even agree with me, but yet they respect me and they don't start shit. And then there's those 2 tards, that 2% of like really fucking idiots. That, you know, because if anybody out there talks about, I love Tommy Thayer and I love Eric Singer and fuck you all, I love the scout, I love that they're wearing the makeup, that's cool with me, man. But if you come attacking me, I'll just attack you back saying how I think it's shitty, you know. And another thing I got to say is that I wish, and financially it'll be a nightmare for Kiss, and you know they are about the money, so it's not going to happen. But I really do not have a problem with Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer because I liked Monster. I liked what was the song on there? Out of This World. I liked it. I know it's blasphemy because it's called Out of This World and it's a space song, but I liked it. I'm not going to lie. If I like something, even though I'm so against it, I can't help but point out what I like musically. And I think Eric Singer is a phenomenal drummer. And I'm all for this lineup of Kiss, but if they were to take off the makeup or change the makeup, but as I said, it'd be a financial nightmare, so it's not going to happen, unfortunately. But anyway, I'm going to end the show now, and then, you know, I'll play you the song and give my little farewell, tuda, whatever. I'm fucking tired. It's been a long show for me, pasting this all together. So now I'm going to dig into the Vieira Vault, which I plan on doing every show, but maybe I'll stop doing it. Who knows? But it's my early shows, so here is something from Kiss from last year. And, after this whole love fest for Paul, now I'm going to slam him again for this. On the Kiss cruise last year, they did a Creatures of the Night theme. And they threw out a couple rare Creatures of the Night songs. And here's a song that I think they only played a couple times on the original Creatures tour, so they brought it back. So here's Kiss on the Kiss cruise doing the classic deep track from Creatures of the Night. This is Scab Kiss with Keep Me Coming. well, there you go. Paul croaking through another tune. Okay, I'm about to leave, but before I say my goodbyes, here are some plugs of stuff you should listen to.
Hey, I'm Dr. Fuck.
And I'm the Ayatollah of Alcohola.
And we are from the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast.
If you want to check out some crazy, uncensored, unbiased, totally nuts reviews of classic hard rock and heavy metal albums, check us out. You can get us on Podbean and iTunes. New episodes every Sunday.
That's right. And we also do each other's moms.
True. Free of charge.
Well, mine charges.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, mine's free.
Earpillar, the podcasting and interview news site. To keep up with your favorite bands or artists and the podcasts or interviews where they appear, go to earpillar.com to find out what we're all about.
You haven't listened to Mars Attacks podcast? What are you waiting for, man? Host Victor Emroyce brings you all types of hard rock and metal-based podcasts. You'll find everything from music-based episodes, interviews, to series such as Ultra Sexy Classic Album Series, where some of your favorite musicians, producers, journalists, and show hosts comments on the albums that push the evolutionary chains of hard rock and metal. Get with it and go to MarsAttacksRadio.com to find out more.
Listen to The Rock Show with Gully and Joe. Go to all the W's, Gully, GULLYANDJOA.UK, 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern. The Rock Show with Gully and Joe. Listen to it. Don't be a cunt.
All right, Kiss Army. Since 2007, you've been getting Podkissed, the Kiss audio fanzine for your ears.
That's right, it's your Podkissed. Every month, the Podkiss crew, along with the Kiss Room, brings you Kiss talk like no one else, whether it be roundtables, interviews with the band past and present, analysis, and great Kiss fun.
Hi, this is Ace Frehley, and you're listening to Podkiss.
Hi, this is Bruce Kulick, and you're listening to Podkiss.
The Podkissed, the Kiss audio fanzine for your ears.
Hey everybody, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris.
And we're from the Decibel Geek Podcast. And if you love this...
then you'll love us.
That's right. Brand new episode every single Monday. You can find us on iTunes and at decibelgeek.com. And the best thing is, it's rock and roll and it's always free.
Music's most diverse podcast, starring Luke Innes, Greg Simp Bootlegs, and Mr. T from Germany. New episodes released every Saturday on Podbean, Podcast Addict, and iTunes. The true alternative podcast.
Have you developed paralysis from trying to choose a movie on Netflix? Of course you have. There's too much garbage on Netflix to sift through. So join us on our podcast, We Watched It For You. We watch a bad movie every week and try to determine its watchability. We Watched It For You is for bad movie fans, B-movie fans, underground film fans, and cult movie fanatics alike. Don't miss an episode of We Watched It For You, a guide to the lesser-known movies of Netflix, available on iTunes or wherever you download your podcasts.
Hey, headbangers, you want your own radio show? Well, you got it. On Thursday nights here on that metal station, join me on the Dr. Fuck Show. Go in the chat room and I will make you my co-host. That's right. Everybody that joins me in the chat room, I discuss whatever you guys want to talk about. I'll mention your name, I'll say what you say, and we're going to go back and forth. And I'll even fucking play whatever request you want. Unless it sucks, then I ain't playing it because my show rules. And only songs that rule is allowed right here on that metal station. The Dr. Fuck Show airs live Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there. Well, no, fuck that hope. I better see you there, motherfucker. Yeah, come on, check out my show on that metal station, 8 p.m. And also a couple more plugs I want to give that I don't have IDs for. DJ Mac, Mind Over Metal. He has a show and a podcast, so check that out. Big Bushy has a podcast. Lee Gertzman, Shaving Cream and Cheese, and Terrence Reardon and Friends YouTube audio and visual podcasts. So here I go signing off. I hope you guys enjoyed my show, and if you're listening to my voice right now, you fucking rule. You're still listening even after the fucking plugs. I'm impressed by your awesomeness. Anyway, I'm going to go now. By the way, in 2 days, I'm meeting Ace Frehley. So, that's going to be awesome. And might talk about it on the next episode. I might not. Very unpredictable show. Very unpredictable. I don't know what I'm going to do. But what I know I'm going to do now is sign off. So thank you so much for listening, man. This is the Vieira Vault Podcast, episode 2. And when I say 2, I'm holding up the horns. I wish Gene Simmons would have copyrighted it. Well, Gene Simmons is going to copyright my next episode because he holds that thumb out. It'll be episode 3 next time. Anyway, thanks again, everybody. Goodbye.
Wow, 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 wow.